our days are over. I mean, you can't expect to get involved in politics or demand higher economic growth or better job prospects. Your time is over now. It's either you accept what you get or you leave the country. That's your two choices.
My guest is Donald Brown, a podcaster, political commentator, journalist, writer, and I would dare add an Afrikaner political activist, an Afrikaner who describes, his words, the fall of the Afrikaner not as a defeat, but as the quiet acceptance of mediocrity dressed up as victory. I came across Donald's podcast, Afrikaners ons moet praat, Afrikaners we must talk, which prompted me to invite him for a chat.
Yes, good afternoon, Jan. It's great to be here.
Nice to meet you. We've just met 5 minutes ago. Afrikaners, we have to talk. Afrikaners ons moet praat in Afrikaans, I think. It has a kind of an urgency to it. So here's my first question. Why the urgency and what should we talk about?
Well, sort of the summary of that video, I would say, is that, in my sense at least, but I think for most Afrikaners at least, there's a feeling of neglect that isn't really addressed. The Afrikanerdom is slowly regressing. And what I addressed in the video is the reason this is happening is because most Afrikaners are unwilling, stubborn, to accept that they are losing. It's perhaps not the best analogy in the world, but if you're an alcoholic, if you want to overcome that difficulty, you have to say, I'm an alcoholic, I'm struggling. And for me, I think the Afrikaners struggle to do that. They struggle to accept, listen, in comparison to our forefathers or in history, we're not doing as well as we once did. And clear indications of that would be, just economic growth, job prospects in South Africa, affirmative action, Black affirmative action, and the speed at which Afrikaners are queuing up to go to, for example, United States.
Yeah.
I think that those are just some of the reasons I'd say this is urgent. The Afrikaner language and culture is disappearing. And I think people are making a mistake. If you're desperate, it makes sense to go to the United States. But make no mistake, in doing so, you will assimilate into that culture eventually.
Yep.
My opinion is Afrikaners will not survive by going to the United States. I think people live under this misconception, we're going to create our own little folk state in the United States. Yeah. The Americans will not allow that. In fact, I think they actively plan for that and distribute you across various states to prevent that from happening if you go there. So, I think this is urgent because at the speed people are immigrating, the attitude of the government towards Afrikaners, that, we need to have a frank discussion. Listen, do we want to preserve this culture or not? And if we do, if we really want to preserve it, we have to first accept we are losing this culture. And then we can start having the conversations. Where do we take this from here?
You said when we started that the Afrikaner is losing. You qualified it now. You're saying we're losing this culture. But I was struck by the way in which your first reaction to my question was that we must accept, the Afrikaner must accept that they are losing. So I want you to, if you can, qualify what are we losing?
First of all, I'd say our respect for our history, for our traditions, for our language. I think especially the language is a very interesting one. Just to take this video, it's one of the first videos I did in Afrikaans. That makes sense to do it in Afrikaans because it's a message for Afrikaners. And the reaction I got immediately was fascinating. People WhatsApping me, Donald, it seems like you're very far right now. Like, what happened? Like, my message has always been the same. I'm just speaking Afrikaans. It's sort of an interesting thing that if you just start speaking Afrikaans, people are like, whoa, Mr. Verwoerd, like what's going on here? So there's a sort of an interesting attitude that people have towards the language, especially in the public sphere. I would say the appreciation for Afrikaans and the willingness to want to speak it, especially and support it. I think both of us talked right before this podcast it's difficult to just get Afrikaner content out there because nobody is willing to support Afrikaans content. So it's I would say it's the thing we've lost is just a willingness to want to support each other and support the language itself. Speak it if you can. So that's one of the things I think it's very important because language, Afrikaans, isn't just something that was just created. It predates you. It will outlive you. It contains nuances that speaks to who you are and who your people are.
It defines
that you need. Excuse me?
It defines you. It is the core of your identity. But you just said it now when you switched over. It's funny, and for the first time presented one of your podcasts in Afrikaans, you suddenly got this feeling that people sort of label you as a little bit right wing. So that's kind of the first peculiarity of all of this. And the second thing is indeed what we just said now is I have it as well in comments from viewers. Praat Afrikaans, waarom praat julle nie Afrikaans nie? Well, the answer is indeed that, well, because Afrikaners are not supporting us, that we really just get a broader audience in the first place. But as I said to you just when we started this discussion, Afrikaners are not supporting their own language. They're not buying their own literature, their own books. They're not. I think in music, it might be different. But anyway, Afrikaners have fallen. Is really the key to the reason why I am talking to you. This fall of the Afrikaner, when do you think it occurred or started occurring? When did we see movement in this falling of the Afrikaner? Was this during the time of the transition in the 90s, or was it a gradual process? And where are we now?
Well, that's once again a great question, Yuan. I would say it was an acceptance, especially in 1994 after transition, that we essentially, the apartheid government, what we did, well, I'm using we relatively, I don't think two of us did anything wrong, quote unquote wrong, but what the Afrikaners did was, you can't even speak about it. It was so bad. It was even worse than Hitler's Third Reich. It was a terrible thing. And the acceptance of that, the sort of tarnishing of our history, inevitably meant that we just were sidelined and just gave up because we lived with this almost constant guilt that, I mean, to speak up, to speak Afrikaans, to speak to what you think you deserve, whether it's a volksstaat or more self-determination or just a better future, whether economically or whatever, you deserve the pain you are getting because you were such a horrible person. Your people were such a horrible person. So I think the fundamental thing we did that led to all of this is accepting that our history is horrible, when quite frankly it is not that bad, and that's a topic on its own. But yeah, we need to reinvestigate.
You're not saying to me, let me just interrupt. You're not making an evaluation. This is not what I'm hearing from you. This is not a subjective evaluation of the history of the Afrikaner that you're giving me now. What you get, am I right if I say you're saying this is the perception of how we are viewed?
I don't 100%. So this is what we expected.
You kind of just made the comparison between apartheid and Nazi Germany. A lot of people will take great exception to that. So I'm asking you, is that your own subjective view of what apartheid was all about? Are you putting us in the same category as Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany? Or are you saying, no, that's the way the world viewed us? That's the way others viewed us, our history?
Yes. That is the problem. That is precisely the worldview we should throw away. That isn't true. It wasn't that bad. And I mean, it's controversial to say something like that, but it's just the truth. I mean, if you just take, for example, just murder rates in South Africa right now, it's astronomical. Like in the Western Cape, more than 100,000 people have been murdered since 1994. That's a conservative number. So, I mean, if you just take things like that, yeah, we have regressed and fallen severely to say that in comparison, things were that bad. It wasn't. It simply wasn't. I mean, just to give you another example, and it was a colored gentleman that delivered this. He was the head of logistics to Dr. Christian Barnard. He was recently at a DA event, and I filmed the entire thing. It was amazing. He just stood up and told the DA minister, listen, I was at, I can't remember the hospital, but it's not important. Yeah, Fritiskier. And he told the minister, I was there for years. And the delivery, the way patients were treated was immensely better. The government of those days cared about your health. Those were the words. And I mean, it's just things like that we need to reinvestigate the past. Otherwise, we're just going to feel ashamed about everything. And then when we're ashamed, not proud about our history, we're not going to feel compelled to get involved in politics and speak our mind and stand up for what we think is right.
You said in ons moet praat, Afrikaners, ons moet praat, that we are not naturally weak, that we've chosen to be weak. Explain that to me.
So with that, I would say that, I mean, if you just take our history from the Battle of Blood River, if I remember that correctly, to surviving the concentration camps, to building Boer republics, I mean, going across the vast, quote unquote, it's not a desert, but like the Karoo, and I mean, it's not easy terrains to pass. We did amazing things, and we have an incredible resilience, I would say. And this is not just my opinion; it's the opinion of many international observers, that the Afrikaners have immense resilience against what is thrown against them. The rugby team is another example of just keep on scoring wins, and predominantly Afrikaans. Or it's Afrikaner thing, I would say. And so yeah, I think there are numerous examples of the Afrikaners championing and surviving. And another great example is the solidarity movement, AfriForum, and Orania, surviving and flourishing despite everything thrown against them. So I think all of this is a great testament, and we're a small population in South Africa. It's an amazing testament how resilient and strong we are. So yeah,
I can only concur with that we are indeed, I would imagine, can be called quite a very resilient nation. But are you saying, and what you said here is that we've chosen to be weak? So I'm trying to unwrap that. What do you mean that we've chosen to be weak? We've just given over.
We surrendered.
We surrendered. Explain.
We accepted the fact that we are a tarnished, cruel people, and the best we can do for South Africa and the world is just to go back into our farms and just enclose ourselves, right? To speak up, to fight for what you believe, to be proud of your language, your culture, inevitably will lead to apartheid. That is the thinking. It will lead to apartheid, the horrible thing that happened. So the best thing to do, stay quiet. You had your time. That's a common expression in South Africa. Afrikaner, jy het jou tyd gehad, you had your time. It's over now.
Okay.
And we accepted that. And that's something we need to push back against, this idea that I mean, there was a case study done. I can't remember the person's name, but she did analysis of non-violent movements in history. And she found a number was 3.5%. You only need 3.5% of a certain population to enact change. So history has always been moved by the minority. The majority was never really a big thing. It's always a minority that has enacted change. So, I mean, in South Africa's case, we definitely have the numbers to do something serious as Afrikaners. We've always been the minority. So I don't get the sort of argument people make now that we can't do anything since we've done so much as a minority already before the democratic dispensation. So yeah,
you sort of suggest in the video that I listened to that we seem to have sort of sort of crawl back to our own little space and go back to our own little world. Is that something that you've observed as you grew up as a young man, this retrieval of the Afrikaner, or is that something that you've suddenly become aware of much later? And to what extent have we withdrawn, as you describe it?
No, absolutely. I witness it as, growing up. I especially see it in family members and friends. The best you can do is speak about it around the braai. Like, we had it good, but I mean, come on, Donald. It's just, our days are over. I mean, you can't expect to get involved in politics or demand higher economic growth or better job prospects. Your time is over now. It's either you accept what you get or you leave the country. That's your two choices. So definitely I saw it around me and family members and friends. I would describe it as a numbness. It's almost like the feeling, well, not that I know this feeling very well, of Afrikaners het baie pynpille gedrink. Just be quiet, sleep, just dull the pain away. And if you can get through the day, that's good enough. If you survive, and it's sort of a culture that we're now promoting. Whoever suffers the most is the best Afrikaner, which to me is a stupid thing. Suffering makes you stronger, but we shouldn't celebrate it. It's a weird thing to celebrate. I mean, if you really want to suffer as much as you can, I mean, go to Ukraine and fight in that war. I mean, you'll find a lot of suffering there. So it's a weird thing to celebrate suffering. That's sort of now a perverse thing in Afrikanerdom. I don't really understand it. Suffering teaches you, but it shouldn't be the reason to live. So I think definitely family members, seeing it also in politics, especially amongst the Afrikaner leaders, a proudness of just getting by, which is often infuriating. I won't name the figures because that's just a rabbit hole, but I see it in the Afrikaner leaders. They celebrate mediocrity, middelmatig, and it gets frustrating at times. And it's good to build all these universities, but we're not going to survive as a nation by just accepting that this is the only thing we need.
Would you say, Donald, that this withdrawal that you're talking about, this disappearance of the Afrikaner, is that as a result of a process of introspection, or to what extent is it because of societal pressure from outside on the Afrikaner, the finger pointing to the Afrikaner, you are guilty, you did that?
One of the biggest culprits of this is liberals, English liberals. Quite frankly, I believe one of the reasons why they're so happy to instigate this is because they've got nowhere to really run to. I mean, if you're an English nationalist, people are just going to tell you, listen, go back to England. And there's some validity to that. Afrikaners have a real, I know, I'm very, what do you call it? For algemeen, what's that? I'm simplifying. Generalizing this, but I mean, if you're English nationalist, there's some validity to saying go back to England. There's some validity. Obviously, this is you were born here, but I mean, the real English nationalist would be in England. That makes the most sense. Afrikaners is a unique thing to South Africa. So I think English liberals, especially to the DA side, they like to push this narrative that apartheid and Afrikaners, sort of the culture, is a very twisted sense of history. And I believe Afrikaners are terrified of liberals and specifically of the DA to the extent that they really vote for the DA and many of these parties because they're so scared. I mean, just a best example is recently I made a graphic where I just said the Northern Cape and the Western Cape should be a Volksstaat. And it got a lot of interaction and views on Facebook. First comment was, Donald, please just stop. It was an Afrikaner. Just stop. I just want to be left alone. This makes sense. We should have this, but we should just stay in our corner. I mean, I'm tired of people attacking me. Just leave it alone. That is cowardice. There's no other word for that. To just say, we deserve this, but if we fight for it, we're going to be personally attacked. So just leave it alone. Number one comment, most like that's just cowardice, and it comes a lot from liberals. People like to point to the ANC, and the ANC is definitely guilty, but one of the main culprits is liberals. It's especially English liberals pushing this narrative that the Afrikaner, yeah, this twisted, yeah, being.
It's interesting that you talk about this withdrawal of the Afrikaner. We go back to our rooms, we close the doors, we get on with our lives. We're not out there anymore. But if you look from this part of the world, from outside South Africa to South Africa, you see a bunch of very noisy Afrikaners fighting quite a fight. You hear that, well, from an international viewpoint, Afrikaners seem to have, at this point at least, Kali Kriel and Ernst Roots and his Lex Libertas, his action now in Washington, etc., with the white crosses and so on. I seem to hear a lot of the Afrikaner and not of white English South Africans. They seem to have submerged and disappeared and become part of the new South Africa. I see from the outside a fair amount of strong resistance to the multicultural, multiracial democracy.
No, I agree. I think it's changing dramatically now. I think you see now, I just interviewed Professor Koos Milan on Truth Report, and he had a perfect word to describe it: caring nationalism. You see the sorgsame nationalism. You see the rise of Afrikaners standing up for themselves, specifically with the idea we're going to take care of ourselves, we're going to put ourselves first, and by doing so, automatically we will help other people because we are as strong as we possibly can be, and that will, I mean, it's almost like trickle-down culture. That's a interesting way to put it. But yeah, it's definitely changing, to your point. There's definitely now Afrikaners standing up because the evidence of this failed experiment, this multicultural liberal experiment, is not clear to see. I mean, South Africa has just been a disaster. So people are looking back at alternatives, and yeah, I definitely agree with you. There's now the AfriForum crowd, Ernst Roots are doing an amazing job of now changing this narrative.
Are they? That's another question I get here is, are they, these organizations, the Solidarity Movement, are they representative, in your view, of the majority of Afrikaners, or perhaps even a majority of white people, or are they a fringe group in South Africa? So are the noisy ones that we hear all the time, are they representative of, in your view, the majority of mainstream Afrikaans?
I believe so. They're definitely, well, nobody's perfect, but I believe definitely they share the sentiments of most South Africans, and they pontificated well, they articulated well. So I would say yes, definitely.
You say South Africa doesn't just have a political problem, it also has a cultural one. In Afrikaans, you said politiek volg kultuur. I noted here, politics follow culture. And you say, as ons nie verstaan wie ons is nie, gaan geen verkiesing ons red nie. If we do not understand who we are, then no election will save us. Explain that to me.
Well, fundamentally, to inspire people, you need to have a vision, an abstract, a divine, if you will, a motherland or a fatherland that people can fight for, not just now, but generations from now. It needs to be intergenerational. It needs to survive you. Otherwise, I mean, if we're just thinking to pure materialistic sense, what makes the most money, or I don't know, what gets you the best girlfriend or boyfriend, that doesn't really inspire a nation. I mean, Britishness or Americanness is something that was generations old. It's hundreds of years old. And South Africa doesn't have that. It's an artificial construct really created by the British and then maintained by the National Party, just by strong Afrikaner supremacy. And now you see the real fault lines in South Africanness is that nobody can tell you really what it means to be a South African. If you ask different South Africans, they will give you different answers. The one will say, yeah, to be South African is to play soccer and drink Black Label. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but some would tell you that. The other would say it's playing cricket and enjoying tea. The other would say it's playing rugby and sitting around the braai field. Everyone has sort of a different answer to what it means to be South African, because we're not unified on that. We struggle to work together. And yeah, it's a fundamental problem. In my opinion, it's not really a solvable problem, because you either need to, I mean, it's a bit controversial, but just for me, the truth, you either need to accept Black culture as a whole and move towards that, or you need to move towards the white culture. You can't really have it both ways, which the liberals and DAs try to do. They try to push this together, and it's not working. It's because the two cultures are fundamentally sort of not the same. I mean,
different.
It's
vastly different.
It's South Africa is like a country of different planets. I mean, drive from Somerset West to Khayelitsha to Mitchell's Plain to Bishop's Court. I mean, you can just as well drive from United States to Russia. I mean, the various, not that you can literally do that, I suppose, but just an idea of the different countries you will reach. So yeah, it's a vast multicultural pot that you can't just inspire people. And yeah, if you really want to save South Africa, you're going to have to start being honest and say we're a country, we're a nation of different countries, and we need to accept that reality instead of forcing down a culture that just doesn't inspire people and just suppresses the population. So yeah.
Am I right if I say what you're saying to me is that we've not been able to, have not been successful in creating a national identity post-apartheid?
Absolutely. The sort of the thing that carried us is Nelson Mandela, because from most objective standards, he was a great person, perhaps not always the best policies, but he was a fantastic man. I'm sure people, that alone will get a lot of negative comments, but what I see from a man, he was a good man. He was a great politician. But beyond that, nobody could really create a vision or a person or identity that really describes South Africa. And I think if Nelson Mandela was never there, this would have failed and sunk long ago.
Since the end of apartheid, you were born in what did you say, the early 90s. Do you experience, and I want to put in the word genuinely here, do you genuinely feel that there's an infringement upon your culture, that your culture has been taken away from you or in some form or another suppressed or forced to be subdued?
Absolutely.
Do you feel that?
Absolutely.
How do you feel that?
And one of the main ways you see that, I mean, once again, it's sort of controversial, but it's subtle. The Black culture, me being controversial, is very quote unquote feminine. And I mean that in a psychological sense, not a lipstick, handbags feminine. Mm-hmm. They are a very emotional people. They are we like to talk about our feelings people. And you see that now translated in our politics. Now, you just recently had Liam Jacobs. He was a politician. He swapped between parties, Patriotic Alliance, then he went back to the Democratic Alliance, and he was welcomed back with open arms. He patted on the back. There was an entire TikTok video. That's one of the best examples of how our culture is being suppressed, that things like this is normalized. It is very normal in the Black culture for, I don't know, victimhood to be celebrated. It's a very strange thing in the white culture. This dancing, the singing, I mean, you can't imagine a P.W. Botha doing things like this, the previous leader. So that it's a lot of subtle things that people have just accepted. This feminization of our politics, of our way of speaking. You don't see strong men anymore. And that's one of the main, so that's a subtle thing. The more prominent and in-your-face things would just be changing names. Graaf Renet, now Robert Sobukwe Town, I believe. It's changing all these names are just extremely unnecessary. Affirmative action, just in our face, just people literally saying, listen, we want a Black person. We're not interested in white or Afrikaner people. Once again, in our face. So there's a lot, and the way politicians, especially ANC politicians, speak to us, it's just Fikile Mbalula saying that the white refugees that fled South Africa are parking attendants. They're not. So a serious politician would have said, listen, we want you back. I mean, that's a Nelson Mandela type of person would have said that. What kind of a politician says, "Ach, yeah, we're better off"? Not only should you go, more of you should go. I mean, that is absolutely madness to speak to a population group like that. So it's a lot of things like that. It's just, I can understand the frustration amongst, especially young Afrikaners. I mean, screw this. I mean, the Australians want me, the people in New Zealand want me, the Americans want me. If this, I'm going. So yeah, no, it's a very strong thing.
Let me ask you this, Donald. Is it so that do you have many young Afrikaners that kind of pretend that they're not Afrikaners?
No, I don't think it's that bad.
Mm-hmm.
I think definitely they suppress their views. So they'll definitely say something different around the braaivuur and amongst friends.
I'm asking you that because what you're saying so far is I'm getting the impression of a people who feel their culture, their identity being suppressed. Am I right if I say that that's what I read from what you're telling me? And my question is still where I'm not quite clear on what do you mean that I wrote down here, you said at night we go back into our rooms, the tears roll because you feel something is not right, that you deserve more, but you can't say it out loud. So we're talking about that crawling back into your own space again. How does that express itself in terms of the South African Constitution that is supposed to protect minority rights, but also just physical things? My understanding is that there are more Afrikaans books sold than ever before. There's more Afrikaans music created than ever before. There's more Afrikaans television created than ever before. So, do you understand the contradiction in terms here? I did a little bit of research. There are more Afrikaans speakers than back in the 90s. So just in terms of sheer numbers, we have more Afrikaners, more people that identify with being Afrikaans. So I'm not quite sure exactly what do we mean, or what do you mean when you say that we've lost something and we feel we deserve better or we deserve more?
Okay, perhaps I think perhaps I understand where we're missing each other. So I thought you just meant speaking Afrikaans. Do they feel that? No. So okay, I get what you're saying. I think all of that is probably true. I don't. Yeah. So politically, Afrikaners are suppressed politically. I think that's the main distinction. They do not feel. So they can support perhaps Afrikaans. They can. All of this is done quietly. So they can be quiet Afrikaners, but they don't feel comfortable expressing a lot of their viewpoints in a political sphere, in a public sphere, in a press conference or whatever. It's fascinating, especially because I know a lot of the DA politicians behind the scenes, Afrikaners. They'll tell you one thing. They don't really subscribe to this liberal world order. They'll sort of say, things were actually better during the old days. But I mean, we have to put up the face for the camera. That's a sort of interesting distinction that you see. I take your point that, I mean, CakeNet and all of these shows might be doing very well, but there's an unwillingness to show your viewpoints, the more controversial viewpoints, especially around apartheid and our history in the public sphere and the political sphere. I think that's perhaps.
You can understand why I find it difficult to understand exactly what it means, because Afrikaners seem to be able to well express themselves. And as I just said now, the record shows that there are more speakers in Afrikaans today than what they were back in the 1990s. That's a demographic fact. It's not something that I'm making up. I'm not quite sure what it is that what you're not able to or free to do within the context of South Africa that you might have been able to do under the previous system.
Can I give you one example, just to make it concrete? To say the Afrikaner culture is better than the Xhosa Zulu culture today. To say that in the public arena, you're going to get serious. I mean, most people would be too scared to say that.
But would
But
you
that is my
want to say
opinion.
that? I mean, would you want to say that, or how would you
Yes,
how would you motivate that? What does better mean?
better just in terms of the way Afrikaners treat themselves, the way Afrikaners handle themselves. To give you one extreme example, I know, and I've spent a lot of time in the colored and black community. I know the SPCA have to literally take animals away from them because they abuse and torture and
Okay.
starve the animals to death. It's a serious problem.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have this problem.
Then let me just qualify this then, Donald, why I question the word better here. I'm not sure. I think the word different would be a more applicable word, but I don't understand what the word better means. I'm going to be very controversial now and say it's what would be the correct way of saying it? Not as developed is maybe a very dangerous thing to say. Is that would be it would describe it better. And I know a lot of people will now get very angry at exactly what I said right now. Different is also maybe a better word to use. Help me out here.
Let me qualify it, and I think we both know where this is going. Let me just cancel.
We're both going to be in trouble about this.
So it's nothing to do with the pigment of your skin. It's not. I think both of us agree. It's nothing to do. It's not eugenics or whatever. It's not how you were born. It's just a value system and an education system, precisely like you said, underdevelopedness. Because you can't. Both things can't be true. You can't say a culture or community is very poor and uneducated and then not live with the consequences of that. I mean, if that is true, most of the thieves and the criminals will be there, because a rich person, I mean, he doesn't need to steal. I mean, well, he can steal legally, but it's the poor people and the underdeveloped people that hit dogs or whatever. And I mean, I think you can. I don't know if there's a better example. I'm not going to find an example now. I mean, well, 400 or 500 years ago, the white culture was very similar to where much of the black culture is today. I mean, we had to develop. But that doesn't mean it's just going to take time. And we just need to be honest about this, that if you drive through many places in South Africa, there's not a huge difference to how it is today than it was, I don't know, 50 or 100 or 150 years ago. I mean, many of these places,
Well, we talk about, I think to be fair, we talk about different value systems, certainly, different cultures, we can certainly say, different levels of development, one could say, whether that's in terms of education or whether it is just in terms of growing wealth and things like that. So better is not a word that I think is a good one to use in this context. But I get what you say. My question is, you saying then that because of this differences, different value systems, whatever the case might be, it is not the best course of action to put them all in one pot, is more or less what you're saying to me.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're experiencing as an Afrikaner.
Yes. And because this culture is the predominant majority in South Africa, the mediocrity is settling down into everything. It's seeping down. I mean, you see it everywhere. Whether it's, I don't know, just nobody's paying traffic fines, or things are listed incorrectly in shops, or it's just, everything is just mediocre. It's just, you wouldn't see this like 30 or 40 years ago. It's the culture is seeping into everything. Everything is just middle market. It's just slowly regressing.
And if you take that to the physical world in which you live, and the pictures we see from here of South Africa, the incredible destruction of the country, the collapse of the cities, the collapse of the towns, is that moving towards the mediocrity that you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely.
That's the physical evidence that I think you can point to.
So more physical evidence would be, for example, when the DA sends in vehicles or support into many of the townships, like ambulances or fire trucks, they are made with stones. When schools are built and the people disagree with the institution or the culture, a lot of times it's burned down. It's many buildings are burned down. It's as a sign of protest when there's much more logical and reasonable ways to disagree with someone than just burning everything down. What would be more examples? It's just the general. I interviewed Wusi Tembekwai, who's a very famous Black South African. He's now very wealthy, motivational speaker. And he put it quite literally. He didn't point to the Black culture, but I think, it sort of embed in what he said is that, do we really want to save South Africa? I'm not 100% sure the DA vision of saving South Africa aligns with many Black South Africans. That's one of the reasons why they don't vote for it, in my opinion. Quite frankly, if you are just getting grants and sitting on the side of the road and drinking Black Label, why do you care about economic growth and stuff like that, or cutting taxes? Once again, you framed it much better. It's underdevelopment or lack of education. It's not necessarily better, but if we don't, align the system and the values and the cultures, we're just speaking past each other. So, yeah.
But isn't that also, if you take it from a totally different viewpoint, Donald, isn't that also there's something in the argument that, well, we are, and then you are, I'm sitting here very safe and comfortable in Europe, but I'm a South African, I'm an Afrikaner, I identify with the country. We are, after all, the settlers. We brought European values to Africa, and not the other way around, that it is inevitable that you have these different levels of development, even historically. Obviously, with the advent of the apartheid chunk placed in the middle of all of this, which just make the situation even worse. What I'm trying to say to you is, we have a civilization that we took to Africa uninvited.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say here is that it seems inevitable, very difficult to integrate Western European values and development with African values and development, and that we are actually tasting the fruits of that today, 400 years post Jan van Riebeeck.
Absolutely. And I think that's the conclusion the colonists made, is just, we're going to struggle to do this. So violence is not the answer. Let's just accept and try to amalgamate and just become one culture. And that's also not succeeding. So we've done the thesis, the antithesis. Now we have to reach the synthesis. This the middle way. What is the middle solution here? Because both extremes don't work. It's not violence, and it's also not just accepting that we're all the same, which is obviously not the truth. We have to figure out the synthesis. How do we navigate this by accepting we are different, but not resulting to violence? That is the tricky part now, and that is the
and how do you do that? How do you do that within the context of the reality that 60% of your people are living under the poverty line, and is as such as also, in fact, and I'm going to use the word again, underdeveloped? How do you marry these different social development stratas into this happy multicultural ideology, democracy?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one. I think democratic elections, specifically democracy, you're going to really struggle to solve this problem, precisely because of the reasons you speak about. I think the more important thing we need to do is build our communities as strong as we possibly can, like the Solidarity movement is doing, like the Oranje movement is doing. Build our communities as strong as we possibly can, stay linked up, support each other. And with that, you create a sort of an alternative state. Professor Koos Milan likes to talk about micro-republics. Frans Cronje likes to talk about enclaves. The analogy he likes to use is we're basically creating castles. So as long as you reach your castle again before nightfall, you're safe. So if we create these strong communities, that's really the only viable solution to the South African problem. And it is a long-term, there's something amazing and beautiful to it, because we're sort of privatizing a lot of the functions of the state. And you can say we're behind. You can also make the argument we're far ahead. By doing that, we're finding out these unique ways of doing things the state would normally do in European or American countries that are often more efficient. I mean, if you see these amazing things coming out of Urania and what the solidarity movement is doing, so to a certain degree, we're ahead. So if we keep doing that, I would not say give up on politics. Stay involved, do your part in voting, keep your one foot in that, but realize most likely it's a very treacherous path, precisely because so many people are uneducated and are voting. My solution would be, but once again, how do you enact that solution in democratic elections, would be to simply say anyone on a grant cannot vote. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. If you're on a grant, you are corrupted, or you're in the service of the state, you are, and you lose the right to vote. If you get off your grant, by all means, you can vote again. But you cannot vote if you're on a grant. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So that would be a solution. How do you enact it when most people on grants are voting? It's almost impossible. So making the community strong, that's what I would say is the real long-term future. Micro-republics, enclaves,
Yeah, you made a reference to the castle, and I can imagine the wall around the castle is part of what you. My question is, are we not there already in South Africa, with all these gated communities and private towns and things like that that seems to be springing up?
Absolutely. And the security estates are just growing and growing and growing. And a lot of people are very antagonistic towards Urania. But I mean, there's, in fact, like hundreds of Uranias across South Africa. If you're completely honest with yourself, it's not just, there's many communities that are, very middle class, if not just very white, security estates in South Africa, who for all intents and purposes, without clearly stating it, have said, listen, as long as you're on that side of the wall, we support South Africanism, but just remain on that side of the gate. So, I think we're definitely there, and it's just accelerating as the state continues to crumble.
I'm sort of summarizing in my own head here what we just talked about. What you're essentially saying is that we only have these two choices. Either we go for the multicultural, multiracial democracy within the with the constitution as we have it, or we start moving towards splitting up in units, balkanization, some forms of evolution of power. Is this what I think this is what the solidarity movement call functional self-government, meaning building institutions that have the muscle to actually protect your culture, develop your culture, and to create the space to live within that culture. That's what they mean when they talk about functional self-determination.
And one of the reasons why I classify myself as an Edmund Burke conservative is Edmund Burke liked to talk about the monarchy or the state or the community or the family being living organisms. It's not just something that lives in your time. It predates you and it will outlive you. And within these living organisms, it contains your history, your culture. So if those institutions are very strong, which we need to create in South Africa, or specifically in the Afrikaner community, the rest will follow. The politics will sort itself out. Because at the end of the day, politicians are just representative of the people. If the people become stronger and more self-determined, and eventually the politics will sort itself out. So
would it be fair to say today, 30 years post-apartheid, that the ideals of the rainbow nation is per definition does not exist anymore, is dead?
Yes, I think yes, because predominantly nature is really tribal and about survival. Only one culture can dominate. It's a false idea that we've pontificated that you can somehow have more than one culture that really thrives with a strong central state exerting some schooling policy and economic policy from the top. So yeah, I think it's been a disaster, and it's only people like Nelson Mandela that really kept it alive. But yeah, no, I can't see any evidence that it's been a success based on what we've talked, and that it's a live thing.
Yeah. I think it was Samora Machel who said, for the nation to live, the tribe must die. And what you're saying is that, in your view, and this is also something I'd like to get your view on, not only from the perspective of the Afrikaner, but also from the perspective of other tribes, other groups. Do you think the same sentiment will prevail?
Yes. And I think, ironically, once again, referencing Professor Chris Malani, he also said in an interview, a lot of English and Black South Africans are sort of yearning for Afrikaners to assert themselves because they find something meaningful in that the Afrikaner is sort of leading the way and just saying, listen, there's actually nothing wrong with being different. And just speaking up your community, being Afrikaner first doesn't mean Xhosa or Zulu second. It means just putting yourself as strong as you possibly can be so that you can actually help other people. And yeah, I think there's a yearning amongst especially Xhosa and English people who sort of, they like to flirt with the ideas of Afrikaner nationalism just because they want someone to just, I don't know, crash this liberal multicultural experiment that they just feel is failing everyone. So yeah.
Well, I guess the question would be, the question would also be, Donald, is there something truly, genuinely, not wished for, like Zulu nationalism or Xhosa nationalism or Tswana nationalism or whatever? Does that überhaupt exist? Not wishful thinking, in reality.
I think there's definitely Zulu nationalism, and there's definitely people who've spoken about we need a new King Shaka, and I think polling also shows that the Zulu Kingdom or KZN wants to break away, or at least hold a referendum on KZN independence. So I think there's definitely an element of Zulu nationalism. The other ones, Xhosa and Tswana, I think that's much more subdued. But I think that the two main nationalisms, as it were, is the Afrikaner and the Zulu one. If you want to pinpoint to really thriving and nationalisms that are still alive in South Africa, it would be Zulu and Afrikaner.
Am I right if I say that you were also engaged with or involved in some way or another with Cape Exit?
Engaged with Cape Independence. In 2023, I helped found a referendum party with Phil Craig. He was the leader of the referendum party. I acted as a social media strategist and led the content creation. So, and it ties to your second question, what we aim to do with the referendum party is get about 100,000 votes in the Western Cape. The plan being, if you get those votes, especially from the Democratic Alliance, our messaging was voting for the referendum party is voting for the Democratic Alliance plus a referendum on Cape Independence, because you're bringing them down below 50%. They have to form a coalition with the referendum party. So you're getting the DA just with a referendum on Cape Independence. So our opinion is, and I think I share the opinion of the majority of Cape Independence supporters, that if you just get a referendum, it will easily be won because the mind shift is now there. Okay, this is possible. And immediately funding will come in for the movement once there is a referendum, because it now has much more legitimacy, and funding is extremely, extremely important in politics. It's very understated, especially in South Africa, but you really struggle to get anywhere. And I experienced this with the referendum party without funding. You need funds. So yeah, once you win the referendum, it's really up to the Premier of the Western Cape, in this case, Alan Winde, to now negotiate with the president terms that is now acceptable for everyone. Will he do that? What he will do, he's a very liberal guy. So yeah, that's a difficult question to answer, but he now has the power, the mandate, once the majority of the people of the Western Cape vote to leave South Africa, to negotiate what they want. And sort of to head to head off the counter argument, okay, but Cape Independence is against the Constitution. If you vote, yes, I want to leave the Republic of South Africa. What is the Republic of South Africa? It is spelled out in the Constitution. So by voting yes, you're also voting to leave the Constitution. So you can't hold a document, the Constitution, against the people who've now voted they don't want to be part of this Constitution anymore. You now need to renegotiate a new settlement because the majority of people of the Western Cape have said, we don't want anything to do with your Constitution anymore. A constitutional court cannot block it. Secession almost inherently is illegal. It is not because you have to break the document, leave the document that puts you together. So yeah, hopefully I answered your two questions. So, yeah, my Cape Independence experience, and also, yeah, it is possible. That's the way to do it.
We've just earlier said that you've sketched the idea of the castle and the wall around the castle, and that's everybody sort of pulling back to their own little spaces and protecting their own little spaces. That's sort of happening in South Africa anyway, with reference to the gated communities, etc. But outside that kind of development that we're seeing in South Africa, is there still space or hope or dreams in the minds of some in Afrikanerdom who dream about the idea of a Volksstaat? Is that still something that's being discussed or that's on the table, or has that been put to rest in the meantime?
I think a lot of people would want the Cape to be a Volksstaat, because the Cape, the Western Cape specifically, and also the Northern Cape, is still majority Afrikaans. So, in facto, if you break up the Union and you have an independent Western Cape, I mean, you can call it the Cape of Good Hope, you can call it Volksstaat. For all intents and purposes, it would be much the same thing. It is a majority Afrikaans culture. Afrikaans is very strong in the Western Cape. So, perhaps not directly, people are calling for a Volksstaat, but I think many of the people calling for Cape Independence have the same idea in mind anyway. I mean, really why they're doing this is they want to preserve Afrikaans culture. They want to protect institutions like Stellenbosch University, where the Afrikaner language is slowly dying. So yeah, I think Volksstaat is very embedded in ideas like Cape Independence. I think the real problem with Volksstaat is the sort of idea that we need to incorporate all Afrikaners in South Africa, which is almost like it's a demographic mess. It's like, how do you sketch that map? It's like parts of Pretoria and then the Northern Cape, and then it's a nightmare. So, yeah, you have to start somewhere, and I think Cape Independence just ties everything together nicely.
We're going to have to start closing down. I want to tell you a little story and get your reaction to it. I think somewhere I also heard in one of your videos you're talking about we're losing numbers as well. Afrikaners are leaving the country, settling down in the USA, finding alternatives, etc., etc. I once had the opportunity of just having an informal discussion with a chat with Thabo Mbeki, whilst he was South Africa's deputy president, I think, at the time. And Mbeki said to me something at the time that I did not quite understand, but years later, I kind of understood what he was saying. It was the following. That was just during the Mbeki years, or just before the Mbeki years, I think during the Mandela years still. He said that it would take South Africa at least 20 years to settle white resistance. He said that the white man will get used to black rule and it will take about 20 years. But he also said to me that the ANC, I used to tell the story in Afrikaans, ANC het 'n lang asem. They've got a long breath. They've got stamina. Don't underestimate that. And he made the reference to the evolution of Africa. And he said that South Africa is like the bush that will grow thick again. In other words, what he was saying, it will by itself, in a sort of evolutionary way, expel the foreigners in time. I think you understand what he was saying. What's your view on that?
I get his point. I would just not be complacent. So there are many countries in the world, if I understand your point correctly, that have rebounded and grown at a much dramatic better pace than what South Africa is experiencing now. I mean, there are many examples. Botswana, Germany after the Second World War, Japan after the Second World War. So I get the argument that things, I mean, you're perhaps being unrealistic, me, of expecting so much autonomy, economic growth, when these are different cultures, things happen slowly, but things are happening too slowly. And the problem is not just it's happening slowly, we are regressing. I think in unemployment now, perhaps not 100% correct, but unemployment is now worse than it was during the start of Mandela's presidency. So there's a lot of metrics that things are just getting worse after 30 years. Like, how the hell is that possible?
Yeah, all of it.
Excuse me?
All of it. Everything has gone worse. Murder rate is up. Unemployment is up. Poverty is up. Everything. It's a disaster.
So, So to correct myself, actually, it's not a problem that we're going too slow. We are regressing slowly. We've been stuck in a technical recession, I believe, for the last 10, 15 years. So, we drastically need to stop with the complacency and the attitude that it's a weird thing, especially with politicians. And this is another topic, but this obsession with meetings. This is one of the core problems, I think, is in South African politics, perhaps also in the corporate sphere, is everything has to be an indaba or a meeting. And it takes up a lot of time. I've been to many of these political events. It's just, they spend 4 hours just introducing themselves. I mean, you understand why we're not getting anywhere, because we are the Elon Musks of South Africa that just say, listen, enough of the meetings, or have a clear agenda when you set up a meeting and a clear call to action and a clear plan. Otherwise, don't bother with the meetings. Politicians talk too much. So I think, I don't know if I'm trailing off the point, but we're regressing. Mbeki is a strange character because he now says that it's apartheid spies. The reason why the ANC is doing so badly, because the ANC
I've heard that before.
That's a very peculiar argument. I don't know. I don't really understand that. But that's my viewpoint. Things are regressing.
It's clear to me where your head is, Donald, and where I think the heads of lots of people are, some form of, call it then, functional self-determination. But I want to ask you this question. We're really out of time. And I've asked this question to a number of people. We know the sort of things that really get people's backs up in South Africa: Black economic empowerment, expropriation without compensation, the Bella education laws, Julius Malema still singing "Kill the Boer." I've asked this question to a number of people. If we can find, this is going to be one of my last questions here, if we can find some reasonable compromises in terms of these Black economic empowerment, expropriation without compensation, Bella education, if we can find a balanced kind of a deal with the other side or other sides, whatever that might mean, do you think that might temper these ideals for going it alone? And
Absolutely.
Will people then turn around and say, you know what, we can live together as one happy rainbow nation?
One of the main arguments you hear frequently from the Cape Independence supporters and activists is, we wouldn't be talking about this if South Africa was doing so well. We don't really want to talk about this because going the route of Cape Independence or Volksstaat is a dramatic action, and it's a lot of legalese, legal problems, logistical problems. So, I mean, if we could just make this work, it would be amazing. But we've run out of options so dramatically that we need to start having these conversations. So, absolutely. If we can find a way to compromise, I think definitely the economics alone can be quickly solved. And if you solve the economics, get the 5% economic growth, etc., you can revive something again. The only thing I would just caution is, because I see the DA and the liberal institutions like to obsess about economic growth. If we just get the numbers right, everything will fall into place. there is still a serious cultural problem in South Africa, even if you get the numbers right. With the attitude of the ANC and many of the Black nationalist parties, is they really look down on Western ideas, Western values, Afrikaner culture. And as long as that exists, even if you get 5% economic growth, but people feel threatened, they do not feel welcome, they do not feel they belong in a tribe, you're still sitting with a serious problem. So you need to, it's both a cultural and an economic problem we have to fix in South Africa. And the cultural problem is far more serious, in my opinion. It's far more difficult to solve. It requires, just like the Afrikaners accepting that they're losing, it requires of and this is not my words, it's Prince Mashele's words. It requires of the Black people to accept that they're behind. Just be honest about it. The Japanese accepted that, I think, right before the Meiji Restoration. And by doing that, by accepting they're behind, they started focusing on the math, sciences, and then they became like a superpower because they accepted they're not where the Western culture and values are. So unless the Black leaders' cultures are willing to accept they're behind, we're seriously going to struggle solving this problem called South Africa.
Yeah, I just want to touch very briefly, and then I will give you my last question. I want to touch briefly on the economic situation in South Africa. You say that is solvable. I've done quite a lot of research. You talk about a 5% annual economic growth in South Africa since the foundation of the Union of South Africa. We've only had, I think, in the 60s and somewhere in the 80s, an economic growth of about 7-8%. So to try to achieve a 5%, there's not one single international and even South African economic institution or financial institution that will suggest even to you that South Africa will have a positive economic growth in the next 20, 30 years. In fact, I think the World Bank, IMF, all these guys' predictions for the next 20, 30 years in South Africa is virtually a 1%, 1.5% economic growth. That's one part of my argument, and I'd like to get your reaction on that. The other one is that a lot of research will show you that no country in the world has emancipated itself, that what it will take for South Africa to bring down to bring the economic problem just to scale will require at least for a period of 20 to 30 years, a year on year, 6, 7, 8% economic growth. Now, that in fact is just nothing but a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. So when you talk about the toughness of the cultural problem, I would say to you that I think personally that the economic problem in South Africa is the one that needs to be cured before anything else, because of the fact that we've got this 40% youth unemployment, I think 60% youth unemployment in South Africa, and at least 60% of South Africa's people living under the poverty line. So that just gives you an idea of the scale of the problems. I'm going to end with this question to you, or maybe perhaps you would like to react to that.
No, I would just say definitely I agree with you. I think it illustrates how serious, in my opinion, the cultural problem is, because the cultural problem leads to the political and economic problems. If you're self-sustainable in your community, and it illustrates, but I agree with you 100%. 5% economic growth is not going to be easy. You're going to really need to do some serious, drastic.
I'm not trying to suggest that we are stuck in the situation, but a lot will have to move before we are going to economically get rid of unemployment and poverty for at least the next 20 to 30 years. I know that's a very negative scenario that I'm sketching.
I agree. It's a serious. I find it interesting that you sort of say it's not possible. I think it's a serious problem, but it's not impossible. So I think if you just get a strong leader, it just says, because that's one of the great things about the South African state. It is so mediocre, and the ANC has so much power, at least the leader, that if you just get the right person in charge, a lot of serious things can happen very quickly. I think Ramaphosa is just a very weak character, and he can exert a lot more force. I think he can in things like affirmative action, which I think affirmative action alone costs the South African economy a lot. So there's a lot of drastic actions that I believe can be taken quickly. It's just we have weak leaders. So
yeah. Let's close with this. I'd like to share with the audience at least one of your videos, if I have your permission to do so. I came across a video of yours, and which I really loved, and I would have loved to have actually put this at the beginning of our discussion. In one of your videos, you say that almost all of us, whether we'd like to admit it or not, are Afrikaner nationalists. You say it in a very sort of a conclusive kind of a way. You state it kind of as a matter of fact. Let's take a look at this video.
Mense, kom ons maak net een ding duidelik. Ons is amper almal Afrikaner nationaliste. Hierdie mense wat argumenteer dat hulle regtig glo in Suid-Afrikanisme en nie Afrikaners of wit mense in die algemeen bevoordeel nie, maar eerder swart mense wil ondersteun. Waar koop julle julle groceries? By Kayamandi? At Britos, where you can get a much bigger discount? Or at Checkers or Woolworths, which are far more expensive? What's the difference between those two places? When you have a hairdresser or a doctor or a dentist, what do you prefer? One who is white and Afrikaner, or one who's another race and speaks another language? When you drive or give advice on driving, do you encourage people to drive through Khayelitsha or to avoid it? Townships like that. What do? I bet the answer to almost everything I just asked, and many questions similar, is that you support the white or Afrikaner option. You guys are hypocrites. You don't actually believe all this liberal talk. Voting for the DA is like going to church and put on the tokenism act. Look at me. I vote for the DA. I support one South Africa. So just call me Nelson Mandela Jr., why don't you? But in all other spheres of your private life, you are a closet Afrikaner nationalist, watching videos of how good things were in the old days, ashamed of it, like you're watching something you shouldn't be, like you're watching porn. Wanneer jy alleen is in jou sitkamer en jou vriend kom in en hy vang jou met oortjie snorkie. No, it's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like. Hoekom? Why are you ashamed of that? What is wrong with it? This is what the left fundamentally gets right. The Malemas, the Field Deal Adams, the Peter Kriels. They understand. You are bluffing. But where I would fundamentally disagree with them, and what you should start doing, be honest and not be ashamed about it. When they ask you about these things, when they try to confront you about your culture, history, language, which you closetly support, instead of the South Africanism crap, you tell them, I'm proud of my language. I'm proud of my culture. Oh, does that offend you? Well, like Mandela said, voetsek. You tell these people, as C.A. Langenhoven geskryf het, as jy weer spring van 'n brug af. You are the lion in this movie. These hyenas, the Peter Kriels. Al wat jy moet doen is net brul. Jy's sterker. Die mense wat die koutjies op hulle hande skryf, dis die mense wat sterk is nie. Jaag hulle net weg. Mense, kom ons maak net een ding duidelik. Ons is amper almal Afrikaner nationaliste.
Okay, almost all of us are Afrikaner nationalists. Your viewpoint here, do you believe that the majority of at least Afrikaners will agree with this video of yours?
So I would say, perhaps I have sort of a dramatic style in front of the camera, so I like to exaggerate and have a character, but sort of my meaning there is that deep down, we have a tendency to want to support the Afrikaans hairdresser, the doctor, the local, I don't know, person who sells cookies or whatever. And then for some reason, when it comes to politics, we've got this weird thing where, no, I believe in one South Africa, I vote for the Democratic Alliance. No, I mean, it's ridiculous. I've this Afrikaner, and you scale watch Orkie Snorkie or Fekhoek Paleis. No, and you're shocked about it. You're terrified of showing people it. So I would say we're private. Afrikaner nationalism is a very private thing, deep down. But we're, once again, tying back to our conversation, we're afraid to show it in the public arena and the political sphere.
Donald Brown, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to meet you. I hope you'll come back. But thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you, Jan. It was great to be here.